I have now given over 100 rides on Lyft under the upfront pricing for drivers model. So let's dive into my earnings and see how their upfront prices compare to Uber's. First off, it's great to finally have upfront pricing for drivers here in Minneapolis and St. Paul on both platforms, Uber and Lyft. I've now given nearly 2,000 Uber rides under the upfront pricing model, and again, just over 100 on the Lyft upfront pricing model. So my overall sample size with Lyft is fairly small in comparison to that of Uber's, but my comparative analysis will only include my last 200 rides, those 100 with Lyft and my last 100 with Uber. And a few things to note: my main requirement when accepting upfront fares is if the ride is paying at least $1 per mile of on-trip distance. So my acceptance rates on both platforms have actually dropped significantly. My acceptance rate on Uber is currently like 40%, and with Lyft it's right around 60%. And that $1 per mile requirement I have filters out a lot of the longer rides. They're not paying as well as they were under the previous time and distance model. Also, during this 200 ride sample size, I was trying to accept a lot of minimum fares because I was given some really nice boost zones on Uber, and I drove during a snowstorm on Lyft. And when you drive during like a weather event like a snowstorm, it's great to stick near a downtown area because you're going to get a lot of requests, and also the per ride bonus amounts are going to be a lot higher. Only accepting minimum fare rides during busy times or if I'm near a downtown area has probably been my best strategy under the upfront pricing for drivers model. Sometimes those minimum fare rides, especially if you're near a downtown area or during a busy time, they can pay out double what they normally pay. And those minimum fare rides, sometimes they're only a mile or 2 miles long. Now, one of the main differences currently between both platforms is that Uber still has their fuel surcharge in place. Here in Minneapolis and St. Paul, it's 55 cents per ride. Lyft removed their fuel surcharge a few months ago. So every single ride that I give here under Uber is going to be initially 55 cents higher than Lyft. All right, so again, my sample size for my earnings was 100 rides on both platforms, my initial 100 rides on Lyft, and my last 100 rides on Uber. All right, overall, my earnings on Uber over those 100 rides were 17% higher than they would have been under previous time and distance rates. And my earnings on Lyft over those 100 rides were 6% higher than previous time and distance rates. It was good to have gains on both platforms compared to previous time and distance rates. My gains on Uber were significantly higher because they are paying for pickup distance on a lot of rides now. Lyft isn't as much. Uber is busier, so I'm getting a lot more requests with Uber. With Lyft, I don't get as many, which means that those requests are nearer by. The demand isn't as high, so the Lyft requests are nearby, so they're not needing to pay for that pickup distance as often. In turn, my earnings on Uber over those 100 rides were $100 more than Lyft on fares alone, and when the fuel surcharge is included, that bumps it $55 more to a total of $155 more than Lyft. And in terms of strictly revenue, my mileage is definitely higher on Uber, but I'm getting paid for pickup distance on a lot of rides, so that higher mileage is negligible. But I ended up making more on Lyft over those 100 rides because of promotions and bonuses. I made nearly $700 in promotions and bonuses on Lyft, and I made $170 in promotions and bonuses on Uber. Overall, I am making more on every ride 6 miles or less on both platforms under upfront pricing for drivers versus previous time and distance rates. And on similar rides between both platforms, 90% of the time, Uber's upfront price is higher than Lyft's. And again, that's because Uber is paying for pickup distance a lot more. And if I include the 55-cent fuel surcharge still in place on Uber, it's not even close. I'm earning more on every single Uber ride under the upfront pricing model for drivers. When Lyft released their upfront pricing model here, I had a feeling it would be this way, especially with the fuel surcharge. And the only reason I really even drove for Lyft was because of those promotions and bonuses. Again, I made nearly $700 in promotions and bonuses. And those promotions on Lyft are not offered every single week. So as soon as I see those, especially if they're really good, I jump on those. But overall, under this upfront pricing for drivers model, Uber is better financially in almost every single aspect. The 55 cent per ride fuel surcharge is still in place. They're paying for pickup distance. Their upfront fares 90% of the time. On similar rides, their upfront fares are higher. Again, unless Lyft is offering a really good promotion, it makes no sense for me to drive for them over Uber in my market under the upfront pricing for drivers model. But what about all of you? How have your earnings been? Have you done a comparison between Lyft and Uber like I have? Which do you prefer? Leave a comment below and let us know. Thanks again for watching and drive safe. Thanks.